Hi, welcome back to Baking with Roxy. I am continuing to bake my way through the Great British Baking Show challenges, and I'm still on what Netflix calls Season 5, which was recorded in 2017, and it's week 8, which is Forgotten Bakes Week. So, of course, these are bakes from English history or British history, and apparently they don't make them all that often anymore, but I am going to make an Americanized version of the challenge for Signature Week. So Signature Challenge is to make a Bedfordshire Clanger, and this is basically meat or a sort of a dinner meal with a dessert all rolled up into one pastry. And apparently their farm workers would have these to take with them to work, and at lunchtime they'd be able to eat this nice enclosed, almost like a burrito, but enclosed in a pastry crust, this hearty meal to help them work through the day. So I'm going to make an American clanger, I'm calling it, because I'm going to use meat and potatoes on one side and baked apples on the other. So you'll get your typical meat and potatoes and apple pie for dessert. So for this recipe, I'm going to start by making a short crust pastry, which is the same type of pastry that you make for a pie. And if you have watched my videos before, you'll know that I have typically been using a recipe from the Food Network called vodka pie dough. Become a little bit disenchanted with that recipe because I realize every time I work with it, it is just so soft that I can't even turn it over into a pie plate without it just falling apart. So I started looking online at other recipes, and one thing I discovered is that the vodka pie dough recipe has a lot less flour to butter ratio than many other pie crust recipes. But that also might be because, again, they list the amount of flour in cups rather than in grams. And cups of flour, I've seen different recipes where they'll have both measurements, and sometimes they call a cup of flour 120 grams. Sometimes they call it 150 grams. It's crazy. The recipe that I found for today is from Recipe 10 Eats, T-I-N, Eats, and they had both the cup measurements and the metric grams, and basically they were using the 148 grams for a cup of flour. So it's possible that I was just not putting enough flour in that vodka pie crust recipe, and I'm just not going to use recipes if they don't have the weights on them anymore. So this recipe calls for flour and butter and sugar if you're making a sweet pie, but since this will be savory, I'll leave that out. A little bit of salt, but I have salt in my butter, and then water. So I might still add a little bit of the vodka just to give it a little bit of extra flakiness when it bakes, but then I'll just use water to pull it all together. So let's get started. To make 2 of the Bedfordshire Clangers, I'm going to start with 370 grams of all-purpose flour. For the salt, it calls for 1 teaspoon of salt if you're using unsalted butter, and I'm using salted butter, which has about a 1/4 teaspoon per stick. I need 2 sticks, so I'm just going to add 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Those ingredients went into the hopper of my pastry blender or food processor, so I'm just going to stir this a little bit to stir the flour and salt. To that, I need to add 230 grams of butter, and again, I'm using salted butter. Each stick is about 113 grams, so slightly over 2 sticks. This needs to be cold butter. So with the food processor moving, I will add small chunks of the butter until it's all incorporated. I've never had to do that before, pop it up like that. Recipes always say that this is supposed to look like little chunks at this point. Mine never does. So I just add the water and then it comes together. So it calls for 5 tablespoons of ice cold water. So I have water in ice here. But first I'm going to add just 1 tablespoon of vodka. I'll stop there. So I just used 3 tablespoons of water and 1 tablespoon of vodka, and it's together. Looks nice. So since I'm making 2 clangers, I want to divide this into 2 bowls of dough that I will wrap in saran wrap or cling wrap, plastic wrap, and then let it chill for an hour. So that weighs 654, so I need to split it into 327. For a round pie crust, typically you want to get this into a round ball, but mine are going to be rolled out into kind of a rectangle. So I'm going to get them that shape, then put them in the refrigerator. And while they are chilling, I'll start on the fillings. Okay, into the fridge. So for the filling, I am going to brown some ground beef and add some onion and spices and red bell pepper. Then I'm going to boil some potatoes and make mashed potatoes. That will be the meatier side of the clanger. And then I have some Granny Smith apples. I'm going to cut these and make a little bit of basically apple pie filling out of these with some cinnamon sugar and a little bit of lemon juice. First, I'm going to peel the potatoes. These go in the compost pile or the trash. Just going to rinse these off. Okay, I'm going to chop these up and put them in this pan. So with this type of pan, I just need to put a little bit of water, and then after it sets to boil, I'll close off the valve and it will cook very quickly, and it's supposed to hold in the vitamins in this type of pan. Now I'm going to peel the Granny Smith apples. I'm going to wear this glove that resists being cut, because I have a tendency to get a little crazy with the knife. So I just need to core these now. There's probably the right way to do it, but I know how I do it. Okay, now I'm going to dice the apples into rather small pieces because the potatoes didn't matter what size because they were in pretty big chunks, but the apples will go in as small chunks. And this is not a special, well, it is a special pan because it's a nice heavy-duty nonstick pan, but it's not the pressure lid kind that one was. To the apples, I'm adding the juice of half a lemon, (10 grams of cornstarch, 64 grams of dark brown sugar. The recipe calls for regular sugar, but I like the dark brown. Just a pinch of nutmeg, probably about 1/8 teaspoon. A teaspoon of cinnamon. Just a pinch of salt. 20 milliliters or 20 grams of apple juice. Always smells so good. Okay, I'm going to put this on the stove top and let it get soft. Okay, so I've got the apples cooking right here, the potatoes back here. I'm going to start the ground beef in this pan. While the meat starts browning, I'm going to chop up some onions. Okay, so the ground beef is browning nicely. The potatoes have about 8 minutes left. I set them for 25 minutes after I put on the lid. And the apples, I feel like, are not juicy enough. So I just added probably another 1/4 cup of apple juice. That should help them bake a little bit better or soften a little bit more. Okay, the ground beef is brown, but I want it to get a little browner. So now I'm going to add diced onion. I have half a medium white onion and half of a large red bell pepper. It's about 94 grams of diced onion, 96 grams of red bell pepper. So somewhere around there. Getting warm now, so we're getting soft. The timer for the potatoes went off, so now I just need to drain these, and then I'm going to blend them with an electric hand whisk, a hand mixer. This is going to make a lot more mashed potatoes than I need for this recipe, but we love mashed potatoes, so they won't go to waste. To the ground beef, I'm adding 2 tablespoons of flour, 1 cup of beef bouillon or beef broth, ground black pepper. Actually, it's multiple colors of peppercorns. Bouillon has salt in it, but I'm going to add just a little bit of garlic salt. I'm going to let this simmer for several minutes while it gets a little bit thicker. To the potatoes, I'm adding 4 tablespoons or 32 grams of butter. I'll blend these with a hand mixer. I'll probably need more, but I'm going to start by adding half a cup of milk to the potatoes. Half a teaspoon of salt. Actually, just a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Okay, the potatoes are ready. Okay, I think the apples are ready. The meat is ready. And the potatoes are ready. So now we just have to get the dough ready. Okay, so I have my meat mixture, my mashed potatoes, my apple pie filling apples, and I grabbed the dough out of the refrigerator. So now I just need to roll this into a rectangular shape, build a little separator wall, and put the fillings in, fold it up, put it on a baking sheet, and put it in the oven. Well, I'll put some egg wash on it. And the oven is preheating to 390 degrees. Something I realized when I was over doing the fillings is that one of the things with the type of short crust dough that you make for these, you're supposed to include beef suet, which is basically just beef fat that has been shredded. So obviously I forgot, so I will just have to use it in something else. Another savory pie sometime. It says it's good until July 2026, so I should find a use for it before then. I really need some dough rolling lessons. just putting some water on it to kind of stick it back together. Okay. I'm not going to put this right in the middle because I figure probably a little more meat, a little less apples. Although apples are good for you. Just a lot of sugar. This has got to be more than one meal. It's going to be big. I think that'll work. We'll see. Still have some pieces that aren't quite. Okay, so see if I can get this to stick. I do want to seal the ends. It's not bad. Okay. Now you're supposed to mark the ends so that you know which is the meat and which is the dessert. So I'm just going to draw a little apple. And put an X on the meat. Okay, one more. If anybody has any clue how to keep it from breaking, cracking on the edges like that, please let me know. little bit of a blowout on this at the apple end. Oh, I didn't flip it over. Okay. A few vents. Mark the apple. Meat. Brush on some egg to give it. I learned from my favorite podcaster, Rin at Home Baking, that the yolk helps it with the golden brown color and the egg white gives it the shine. So I wonder if these little blowouts, if that wouldn't have happened if I had used the lard. Maybe it would have been a tougher pastry case. Oh well. Okay, so now I'm going to put these in the oven, and since all of the fillings are cooked, all I need to do is make sure the pastry gets done. So it should only take about 25 minutes. I'm going to check it after about 15. Okay, here they are. Definitely had some splitting and leakage. So I wonder if somehow that using suet in the crust would have made a difference. Guess I'll have to give that a try at some point. But everything's done, so I'm gonna let these cool off, and then it'll be time for dinner. Okay, well, they have cooled a little bit, not completely, but as they sit here, they settle and they're cracking even more. So I want to go ahead and get them on the plates. And when I first saw this big crack, I know you can't quite see it, but there's a big crack there. It looks super soft inside. I thought, oh no, the pastry's not done. Then I realized that's mashed potato. So the pastry is done throughout, and this thing is huge. There's no way either one of us could eat a whole one for dinner. So since we have the meat potatoes down here and the apples down here, what I think I'm going to do is slice it long ways and just serve half to each of us, and then save the other one for another night. So this is American Clanger, and I'm going to give it a try here in a minute. But thanks for joining me, and I hope you find interesting or maybe learn some stuff. If there's anything you can teach me, I'd love that too. Please subscribe, ask your friends to subscribe, and next time is the technical challenge for Forgotten Bakes Week. And basically they're just making a pie with a lattice on top. I've done that before, and the flavors that they have you use, they call it a rum Nicky, and it's basically like fall flavors, and it's spring right now. So I think instead of that, I am going to make a Bakewell tart, and I've never made one before. I have been dying to try frangipan, and I'm going to make a strawberry frangipan tart. So that will be something new and different, and strawberries are just about in season, so it's perfect. So I'll see you next time. Bye. Well, that worked pretty well. Let's see the other side. Okay, Okay, well, you can see the meat and potato side and the apple side, and here's the little divider down the middle. That's pretty cool. It's still steaming hot, but make sure I pull it off a little bit. Ooh, that's hot. It's really good. It's kind of like a beef pot pie, right? Except I get an apple pie with it. Okay, give it a try. Let me know if you do.